There are hierarchies and levels in this world. For example, when you go into the plane, you have a choice to sit whether in economy or business or first class. You can choose different car brands. Some drive Toyotas, others drive Range Rovers, others drive Rolls Royces. Just like that, there are ranges in houses. Some live in townhomes, others in detached, others in huge mansions. So there's levels. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions in the Quran, "Undur kayfa faddalna ba'dahum ala ba'd," that we have given levels upon levels to people. And so there are levels on earth, and then there are levels in Jannah. The highest level in Jannah for a seat will be people who are seated on light, like pearls. And a level lower than that is people in Jannah will be seated upon gold. And a level even lower than that is people who will be seated upon misk. And one of the most attributous things about these levels is in Jannah, when a hafiz or an individual who used to recite the Quran goes into his Jannah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, read and rise, recite and rise. And that individual will begin to recite the Quran, and when he will end, that will be his maqam in Jannah. Imagine. A very interesting level of this, an example of this levels, comes from the story and the battle of Mu'tah. 3,000 men marched towards Mu'tah, which is towards present-day Jordan, to fight against a world superpower. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gives a very specific instruction. He says that the standard, the leader of the army, will be Zayd bin Haritha. And if he should fall, then the leader should be Ja'far bin Abi Talib. And even if he should fall, then the standard should go to Abdullah ibn Rawaha. And even if Abdullah ibn Rawaha falls, then you can choose a leader from amongst you. 3,000 people. Al-Waqidi, he writes that they were facing an army of 100,000 soldiers. Ibn Ishaq, he writes 200,000 soldiers. Call it whatever you will, but immense odds. How can one army of only 3,000 people face an oncoming army of 100 or 200,000 soldiers? That being said, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the miracle is granted to him where he can see everything from the battle of Mu'tah, and he's seated on the mimbar and he's seeing what's happening in the battle of Mu'tah, and he is narrating. I like to say this was the first radio in the history of humanity, first television in the history of humanity, where those individuals are fighting, and the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, thousands of kilometers away, is narrating the actions that are being committed within that battle. Rasulullah, he narrates, Zayd bin Haritha, he comes, he battles, he fights valiantly, and now he is martyred and he enters into Jannah. And he says Ja'far bin Abi Talib is handed the flag, the standard of Islam, becomes the leader of the Muslims. They cut off his hand, then they cut off his other hand, and now they have stabbed him. Ja'far has been martyred. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants him wings in the place of hands, and he uses those wings to go into Jannah. The Muslims are now in pandemonium. Quickly they go to Abdullah bin Rawaha. They go to Abdullah bin Rawaha and they say, Abdullah bin Rawaha, come. Zayd bin Haritha has been martyred. Ja'far bin Abi Talib has been martyred. Some say Abdullah bin Rawaha radiyallahu ta'ala anhu was in a fast. So he's about to break his fast when all of a sudden his heart begins to waver by just a bit. And then almost instantaneously he looks to his heart and he says, Ya nafsu maliki takrahin al-maut. Oh soul, why are you afraid of death? Why has the kingdom of death overtaken you? And in the next moment he is up, the flag is in his hand, and he is fighting. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he narrates, he says, the standard has come to Abdullah bin Rawaha. He fights, he is martyred. He goes into Jannah, but his level is below the other two. A companion of the Nabi of Allah wavered for a split second, and that decreased his levels in Jannah. My dear brothers, let's not waver when it comes to praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's stay steadfast, and let's try to gain as many levels in this dunya as possible to try and reach the footsteps of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam on the Day of Judgment. Ameen.